The next guy that to be successful is going to have to understand that. It's going to have to understand that. I remember when Brett Weinstein was trying to put together that like Dark Horse project where they were trying to get a couple of other people nominated and a Democrat and Republican and whatever. And Brett called me and he asked me, he's like, who would be good? What would be a good what would be good characteristics? And I was like, well, the first thing is they have to be networked. You have to be networked. You have to be bringing your own distribution. You have to be bringing your own tribe. You have to be bringing your own star power and able to circumvent all this other stuff. And in the process of building something like that, you learn how to lean into the hate, lean into it. Are you leaning into the hate these days, Darren?
Yeah, I mean, I'm invigorated by it. I think I'm wired differently. I do. I just get a kick out of it, and it's like it's a guilty pleasure. So the whole Twitter stuff, it's a guilty pleasure because I really do take satisfaction in humiliating people I find disgusting. And Jonah Goldberg is one of them. Brandy Zadrozny. And the thing is, it's, a lot of these people, they're just not used to being in the arena. They're so protected from any criticism. There are people who are, scrappy and they're there, like the Bellingcat guy who is, he's an Intel cutout, horrible guy. He's very, he's sensitive, but he's actually more scrappy than Brandy Zadrozny was just doing her dirty work in complete obscurity, and like just to pull these people on and say, look what they're doing. Or even more so, think of Norm Eisen. Like, he was just like totally, unknown. He's the kind of guy who sits quietly cross-legged at Atlantic Council conference, and all of a sudden he becomes, he's just plastered all over and everyone knows his name. And so, there's a power to kind of social opprobrium, social disapproval, and a lot of these people are very sensitive to it, and it's good that they should receive a small taste of it, because the psychological dimension of it is really, where the gains can be had. Like, I'm under no illusion that, okay, there's an expose of someone like Norm Eisen and all of a sudden, he's canceled or they replace him. It just doesn't work like that. But you can mess with them. And, most human beings are kind of structured in a way that they don't like to be publicly called out by that. So I guess for me, I do enjoy these things. It somewhat detracts. Like, you have to, people have a hard time having, one image of somebody. And so I think in some ways it might undercut from, if I wanted to, I could be the civilized professor and, just like, the Heidegger guy. And, there's, I could do that. But if you do multiple roles, people can get confused by it. But, so I'm trying to navigate that. But there's definitely an enjoyment from doing that. Every day I try to tweet to at least one person gloating about Nord Stream 2. But the thing is, it's not just, having that type of personality. Now, with the kind of cancellation ecosystem that exists, you can be someone, you can say, I'm totally okay with being infamous and hated, but if they choke off your ability to make a living, you're still screwed. You're still screwed. So then you have to be willing to be hated and poor. That's a little bit too much for me. I can be hated, but I don't want to be poor.
Amanda, I'm going to come to you in just a second and talk about you leaning into the hate and what you've got coming up. But I want to just drill down on one thing here with Darren. First of all, you just said something really important. Hated and poor, right? That's a really bad combination, obviously. But what the underlying theme there is that political independence in the future, more than ever, is going to be dependent upon your ability to independently earn income. Your wealth, your income, your personal property, your security, all of that has to be derived outside of the Blue Church, outside of the cathedral, outside of the Leviathan. You have to find a way to become financially independent of the system, because the more we are locked into the system, the weaker you are, the less room you have to maneuver, the less freedom you have politically, the less freedom you have of speech and exerting your constitutional rights. So more than ever, physical, financial, and personal sovereignty are essential in this environment, and now more than ever, and especially moving forward in this environment. Darren?
Definitely. And just to follow up on that, sort of one kind of the spiel I give as the fundraising pitch for Revolver that's related to that observation is that, it's most people, there are people like the Brandy Zadrozny's, these others who make a living carrying water for the system. And that's like playing on ultra easy mode no matter what they do. Brandy Zadrozny, she styles herself as a disinformation reporter. She's supposed to expose disinformation. Let's just talk about the Sicknick thing. She spread the Sicknick fire extinguisher bear spray disinformation. It's too good. She was spreading Sicknick disinformation, and yet she attacks the site that actually was right about it from the beginning. But that's the thing, is she doesn't have to be right. She doesn't have to even be especially talented. All she has to do is carry water for a regime. And this is, again, I don't want to get into this separate conversation, but I've been doing a lot of thinking about what it is about a civilization in the stage that we're in that is so accommodating to mediocrity. Like, mediocrity does thrive, and it's not just, oh yeah, people are mediocre, but there's a special quality of the stage that we're in civilization in our country that's extremely conducive to mediocrity thriving in a number of domains. And it has to do with the trade-off between competence and basically buying into the increasingly untenable lies that undergird the system. And so it creates a kind of selection for a certain type of mediocrity. But you can have mediocrities like Zadrozny carrying water, and they can make a great living for the regime, even if they really screw up and their news agency has to fire them. They'll land on their feet the next day, no problem. So that's a certain group of people. There's another group of people who make a living dependent on the system but not carrying water for the system. So that's like anyone in a corporate job. And if you have a corporate job in America, forget about free speech. I hope for your own sake you don't have any interesting opinions, because that's an existential liability in corporate America. Forget about it. You'd better be a slave. And so you're not carrying water for the system, but you're making a living kind of as part of the system. Then there's another category, which is making a living independent of the system. And that's hard to do, and I have respect for anyone who does it. But then there's the final category of people who make a living challenging and humiliating the system. And that is the ultimate kind of challenge mode, but it's also the ultimate satisfaction if you can pull that off. And that's the space that basically all three of us are in. So, good for us.
I almost started to pat myself on the back there, but then you did it for me. You're absolutely right. And Amanda, you experiencing a ton of the same things as well, and you're now back out into the real world. You're producing films and media and series and shows. And so what has your experience been now that you're back out there? You're fundraising, you're shopping projects, you're interviewing people, you're planning it out. What is your sense about what we're talking about right now, and how does that feel? And can you lean into the hate at the same time?
Well, I mean, look, I don't want to be poor and canceled either. I mean, I don't even know how to be poor. I wouldn't know what I would do. I mean, I tell people I'd be the first person in the gulag to sell everybody out. Like, minor discomfort throws me off very quickly. Like, I'll sell out the whole movement for a pack of cigarettes. I'm just going to tell you guys that right now. Like, if they put me in an uncomfortable situation, like, I'm just going to be like, it was them. But no, I mean, the terrible thing is that, yeah, I actually, as I said, I feel, I mean, look, I joke about that, but like, I think we all care far more about being able to tell the truth and to be able to say what we actually think than anything. And part of that is being financially independent because of the way that, as you say, to challenge the system is the hardest thing. And that's the ultimate goal. And I feel lucky in that way because, like I've said before, which is that in my particular field, I don't have any competition. Hollywood has abandoned making the kind of movies that I want to make and that half of America wants to see. So I have a very minor little, I think hiccups that myself and people that are far smarter than me that are working on these things, which is a distribution issue, which is not that hard to solve. We get those things ironed out, and suddenly we have this massive market to make whatever movies come into my friends and people that I find mind. And here we get this amazing freedom to have this market all to ourselves because nobody else wants to do it because the industry that does it has left the room. It has left everything on the table. So it's a really actually kind of invigorating and wonderful place to be. And I mean, I imagine that, we're all kind of in that position where it's like, because we're doing something that could be categorized by really dumb people as something that's somewhat controversial or hard, you find yourself in this sort of peerless position where you're just like, well, I'm just going to do what I like. And it's an amazing thing. You're like, okay, and there's a lot of people that want to hear what you like, apparently. Apparently there's a lot of people, Jack, that want to hear what you want to talk about and that want to read what Darren and Revolver are interested in covering and putting out. And they want to see what I want to fool around with making movies about. So it's actually a really great place to be. I feel it's the one thing, like I say, that I feel positive about in this declining civilization that we're all in together.
It's hard to be publicly joyous in the face of some of the circumstances that are going around. But, there is benefit to living by example, right? So guys who are listening, guys who are in the liminal order, are interested in the liminal order, this is something that we focus on constantly. Developing your personal sovereignty. It is the only path to actual liberty. Okay. Darren nailed it. He said, if you're working in a corporation, you don't have liberty. You don't have free speech. You don't even have the ability to express a political view that is mildly outside of the accepted norms. Okay. What kind of life is that? You're in debt from student loans. You're chained to a desk in a corporation. And you can't even exercise your constitutional rights to the extent that they still remain in this country for fear of losing your job and your ability to feed your children. And then, of course, having that plastered as the first result under your name search on Google for the rest of your freaking life. That is a very meticulously crafted form of slavery and servitude that is almost decentralized, which makes it very difficult to combat. Okay, but it doesn't make it any less pernicious. And so it's important for young people, especially. Holy cow, man, do I hammer my own teenagers with this over the head constantly. But don't get into the system. Find a way from the beginning not to get involved with the system. Start your independent jobs and hustles and independent, I call it info homesteading. Go out into the information hills and learn how to live off the information landscape. It is possible. There are gold in those hills, and you can go out there and you can live off them just the same way a woodsman could go out into the woods with an axe, and in a year you have a cabin built and a farm going, and he's never warm and he's never hungry and he's never getting eaten by monsters. That's how you have to be in the information landscape, because it is the only path to liberty. Everything else involves selling your soul. And in this case today, it's selling your freedom. In this case today, it might be just selling your ability to move around the country and associate with whomever you want to associate with. So I can't stress this enough. Look at people like us, and this is why I said, Amanda, live this life with joy so that you may attract others to it and lead the path, lead the way. And to the extent that we can influence young people who have not yet committed to the system and then have too much to lose, Guys, when you're 21, it's a lot easier to start off on your own and make something happen than when you're 38 and you've got 2 kids and a wife and a mortgage and a couple of cars. Those are the silver handcuffs, right? They get you trapped so you can't make a move. Make your move now, guys.